You think you know me?
Alright everybody, it's been a while since I've worked on the Hawk here. Still working on modifying this thing, getting it ready for the road. We've already done the air intake. I'm getting ready. I still got to do the valve adjustment. I still got to do the gearing. I'm actually getting ready to switch out the coil. I got a Nibbi Racing Coil off of Amazon. This is not the yellow one, folks. This is the one that actually works for the Hawk DLX. Not saying the yellow one won't work, but this one's more correct for the Hawk DLX, so I'm going to go ahead. All I did for this, the DLX, my version of the DLX actually has the coil here in the front. I've seen some where they've had it underneath the tank, and I don't know if that's just the carbureted ones or if that's just mine happens to be the way it's mounted. All right, everybody, we got the Nibbi coil on. You see it's not mounted the same way the stock one was. I was having a hard time getting the tank to fit with it. The stock hardware wouldn't work because I was hitting this part actually on the frame, and then when I got it spaced out a little bit, then the tank was hitting, so I couldn't get the tank back on the way it was. But this is pretty solid. I got it where it'll stay on there. But the next job is going to be to take this cover off and adjust the valves and set them at 0.003 for exhaust and intake. And I actually already have it set at top dead center on the compression stroke. All right, we got the cover off. Just got to make sure your gasket stays down in the groove here. Be sure not to rip it, take care of it the right way. Here's the top of the engine, the valves. Actually, all you got to do is go in here with a feeler gauge. Like I said, 0.003 or anything close to that, 0.025. That's basically what they recommend on this motor. Okay, here's the feeler gauge, 0.003. This is where you actually check the valves here. I should be able to get that through with just a light amount of drag, and you can see that's pretty tight. I can't get that through on the intake side. And we'll try to get through here to the exhaust side. Just by looking at it, I can see the exhaust side set very, very tight on this. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and loosen up the two nuts on top and then go ahead and adjust it from there. And of course, you just take your 10mm and you loosen that up a little bit, just enough so you can move it. And then you're gonna go ahead and take your valve and you just turn it just a little bit. Then you go ahead and check it with your feeler valve, again, 0.003. That might be a little too loose right there, so I will tighten that back down just a tad. See if I can do that while it's still on camera. Right here, just basically you spin the valve a little bit, tighten it down. See, that might be just a tad bit tight, but I could, no, actually that's probably perfect right there for the intake side. So I'll go ahead, and while the feeler gauge is still in there, I'm gonna tighten that back down. Because I know when you're doing this, the valve can actually tighten itself back down again when you're tightening the set. So that's back in there. Let's see. That's pretty good. 0.003. They say there should be just a little bit of drag. It's got a little bit of drag on it. That should be good to go on the intake side. Like I said, basically it's going to be the same thing. You just loosen that 10mm nut and you get the feeler gauge in there. Go ahead. Sorry, this is hard to do with the camera, but basically, like I said, you just adjust the valve here a little bit by hand, and then you tighten the nut back down where you get it to where you want it. Pretty simple job, actually. All right, I should have these all set to go. I tightened them down. Let me see. Let me check one more time. 0.003 gauge. Actually, it feels like it's a little tight in there still. Oh, there we go. Should have some light drag in there. There, it actually moves pretty good. Just a matter of getting it in there. That's on the intake side, and now the exhaust side, I should be able to slide the gauge in there, sort of, kind of, sort of. There we go. Once you get it in there, this should have a little bit of drag in there. From the factory, they had like nothing. There was like no space in there whatsoever. You could barely get the gauge in there at all. But now let's go ahead and put the cover on. Just get the 3 bolts on. Make sure your gasket's in the where it's supposed to be, so you don't ruin it. It's always good to put maybe a little bit of oil on that too before you put it back in. All right, lid's back on. I got the spark plug wire hooked back up. Now I just got to put the gas tank back down. We're getting pretty close to having this thing ready to start up again. I'm charging the battery now. Still got to put the seat back on, but I got another project to do with that seat, so let's get moving.